Welcome to Making Space For, the podcast where we embark on a journey to simplify, organize, and prioritize our lives. I'm your host, Paige Rabin, and each episode will explore the art of intentional living, helping you make room for what truly matters. In a world filled with constant noise and distractions, it's easy to find ourselves surrounded by things that don't contribute to our happiness or well-being. Making Space For is your guide to decluttering not just your physical space, but also your mind and soul. We'll dive into practical tips on downsizing, right-sizing, and the transformative power of letting go. Whether you're starting a cluttered closet, pondering legacy planning, or seeking the elusive balance between work and self-care, this podcast is your sanctuary for inspiration and actionable insights. Join us as we feature experts, share personal stories, and explore the profound impact of intentional living. Together, we'll navigate the journey towards a simpler, more fulfilling life. One where you have more of what matters and less of what doesn't. So are you ready to make space for the life you've always wanted? Let's dive in. This is Making Space For. Well, before we dive into today's episode, a quick shout out to our flagship company, A Move Handled with Care. As Denver Metro's premier senior and specialty move management expert since 2007, we've mastered the art of downsizing, right-sizing, organizing, and every step in between. From packing and moving to unpacking and staging, our experienced staff represent all stages of life, offering a compassionate touch to what matters most to you. So, if you're looking to make a seamless transition while keeping what truly matters in focus, trust A Move Handled with Care. Visit us at amovehandledwithcare.com or on Facebook or LinkedIn to discover the difference. Let's continue making space for the life you deserve. Welcome back to another episode of the Making Space For podcast, where we explore stories that inspire, challenge, and uplift us. I'm your host, Paige Rabin, and today we have a truly special and heartfelt episode for you. This is not just any episode, it is my most cherished and favorite one so far, featuring our very first client guest and a woman whose journey has touched me deeply. Our guest today is Lois Hjelmstad, a remarkable author, speaker, and former piano teacher who planned to teach until she was 96. Life, however, had other plans. The night before her first mastectomy, Lois penned a poem titled Goodbye, Beloved Breast, not knowing that it would lead to an award-winning book and a speaking career that spanned all 50 states and beyond. Lois's first book is a powerful account of her battle with breast cancer. The book was start of a literary journey that brought us other gems like The Last Violet, Mourning My Mother, a moving story of grief and inner peace, and This Path We Share, reflecting on 60 years of marriage, a heartfelt and perceptive exploration of her 6-decade-long marriage with her late husband, Les. Lois has spoken to over 600 organizations, including healthcare professionals, cancer support groups, and women's groups across the United States, England, and Canada. She has been featured in Rosie Magazine and appeared on The Rosie O'Donnell Show. After the deep loss of her beloved husband, Les, Lois faced another challenge, downsizing and moving. It was during this difficult time that she turned to our company for support, making this episode even more special and close to our hearts. Today, Lois will share her incredible journey of resilience, love, and the power of written word. Her story is one of courage and inspiration, and we are honored to have her with us. This episode is sure to be one of the most touching and inspiring conversations we've had as we dive into Lois's experiences and the wisdom she has gained along the way. This is Making Space For Resilience with Lois Hjelmstad. Okay, well, welcome, Lois. Thank you so much for joining us. I don't know if you knew, but you are the very first client of ours to join us on our podcast. So thank you so much for taking your time to share your story with us and your experience with A Move Handled with Care.
I feel honored to be here.
Yes. So I met you, we were just talking about this a little bit. I met you kind of coming out of the pandemic, and you were thinking about downsizing and moving into a senior living community. So tell us just a little bit before we kind of dive into that, but that's just kind of how we met. Tell us just a little bit about who you are, your background, who are you as Lois?
Okay. Well, back when I was a teenager in the 1940s, I had only one plan. That was to get married and have a family. So I got married when I was 17 to the love of my life. Actually, we remained married for 72 years. And when I was 21, we started our family. We have a daughter and 3 sons. I actually have 2 children who are in their 70s, which blows me away completely. So that was my plan. All the rest of my life was unplanned. It turned out that I started teaching piano, and taught, but that was because somebody asked me to do the 10 free lessons
Sure.
from classical music. And so I taught the 10 free lessons to a couple of people who had purchased instruments. And then the neighborhood kids kind of started coming in, and this and that and the other. And I ended up teaching piano for 40 years. Along the way, I took quite a few pedagogy classes because when I first started, I really didn't know anything except how to play the piano. So that was my first totally unplanned, very long.
And this piano,
career.
and your piano career, you built a very successful little business for yourself here in the Denver area.
I actually had about 65 students a week for many years. Some, eventually I tapered down.
Mm-hmm.
And of course I had to start up.
Yeah.
But that was, it was very fulfilling work, and I loved it dearly. It's kind of funny because when I was, in my teens, when I was in school, the only grade I ever got below an A was in music.
That's funny.
And I always wanted to be a writer. So I taught music for 40 years, and then I became a writer. Well, the next thing that happened that was unexpected is I was diagnosed. I suddenly one day got sick and never got well. And I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome. And the year after that, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Well, all of that led to a long, I guess, speaking career. I also did I'll show you this, a magazine cover for Colorado Woman News.
This one here, right on top.
Okay, well, this is the actual.
Oh.
This is the actual magazine, where I was naked from the waist on up. And I did that in 1993 when nobody did stuff like that.
Right.
And anyway, the book and the cover opened a lot of doors for me. And I subsequently, actually, I can't believe this to this day, spoke in all 50 states, England and Canada. My husband drove 400,000 miles in the process. And I appeared on the Rosie O'Donnell show and things I would never have thought I was going to do.
How did someone find you? How did this come to be?
Well, the book, my first book, Fine Black Lines, Facing Cancer, Fear, and Loneliness, came out in the fall of 1993.
Which is this one here. I've got all of them here.
Yeah.
Yes, this one
1993.
here. Okay.
And somebody asked me, well, let's see, I'm not sure. I was in a very naive way trying to do marketing and trying to do publicity for
Sure.
myself. And I'm not sure how this woman found out about it, the editor of the magazine, but she asked whether I do the picture. So I just blithely say, sure, I'll do the picture. The day that it came out, I was absolutely gobsmacked. I saw stacks and stacks of that cover, and I thought, what have I done? How could I possibly have done that? I think it was Mountain and Plains Book Fair was going on at the convention center.
Mm-hmm.
And so Les and I were supposed to take 6 bundles of magazines and take them down there. And I was so embarrassed about the whole thing. Les just he put some by the door. And then he watched, and some people would come in and look at it and slam it back down on the pile. So it was pretty controversial.
Well, I was going to ask, like, I would say, maybe back in the 90s, maybe you would get a mixed bag of emotions or, reactions to it. But Did you have a lot of, obviously you had some really good positive things come out of it.
Yes, I did. You know, I eventually felt that it was a help
Yeah,
to lots
absolutely.
of women, and lots of women told me that, and so.
I'm sure this, you know, to see yourself in print, you know, for somebody who might be feeling this way or looks this way or is worried about the things you were, you know, to see that, you know, kind of gives them a little bit of validation and support that somebody would be brave enough to do it.
Well, I was honored to have the opportunity.
How did Les feel about it?
He was always on my side. He was always the Rock of Gibraltar around whom I danced, and he was the core of my universe, actually.
And how did your kids feel?
The kids had a lot more trouble
Oh, okay.
than Les did. Yeah. Oh, one thing I should say, I guess, how it happened was in the book. I put a picture of myself with the first mastectomy.
Oh, okay.
Except that one was blurred out, so it wasn't, you know, but I think that's what led to thinking I would do this other one.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you have a wonderful speaking career, and then after that, what happened?
Well, let's see, after that, what happened? Well, probably the next thing that happened is in 2012, my husband collapsed at the airport on Thanksgiving after we were returning from a trip. And he never was totally okay after that. I mean, he was mentally very fine, but he physically, it was hard for him to get around. He had several heart surgeries, and so I took care of him. And let's see what happened after that. Well, in 2002, I wrote a book that my mother, well, that was before that. I wrote a book about my relationship with my mother before, during, and after her death. And then in 2010, I thought, well, why not write about the first 60 years of our marriage? And so I did that, and
I've got all of your books here, and I'm very curious because as a creative writing person, I do, you know, just for my own, you know, creative outlet. My husband also just published a book himself, and so we went through that process. But did you self-publish these?
I did.
Okay.
In '93, when I did the first book, I formed a publishing company called Mulberry Hill Press. Got all the licensing and did all the things you need to do. And if you've published a book, you know that it's quite a process.
It is very much a process, yeah.
Yes.
And not to mention, you know, cover design and layout and what color do you want the inside, what's the font. I mean, there's more decisions on just even the look of the book, more or less the content.
That's right. And probably each of my books, I did, I'd say between 25 and 40 run-throughs, where I would change this and that, or paste and copy and paste and do all that kind of thing.
Did you have somebody do it for you? Did you have somebody edit for you, or did you self-edit as well?
I hired a graphic designer each time, and also an editor.
Okay.
I also self-edited a lot because I did find that I could find mistakes even after an editor. And then after the books were published, my sharp-eyed children would find mistakes. The wonderful thing about Kindle direct publishing is that if you find a mistake, you can fix it.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, when I started out, you printed at least 2,000 copies at a time. Well, if there was a mistake, you were just stuck with it. Well, now if you have a mistake, since Amazon prints them each time there's an order, you can go back and fix the mistakes.
Okay. Yeah. I remember my husband doing kind of the same similar thing. So you self-publish all of these. What got you into wanting to write? Is it just a creative outlet that you had, or it just was something you felt passionate about?
It was the breast cancer.
Okay.
That really, really rocked me back on my heels. And these poems just kept popping out of me. I took about 20 of them to my oncologist, and he said, "You've got to do something with these." Okay, fine, doctor. Good for you to say.
Sure.
Hard for me to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it can be cathartic and help you process through things. And now you have quite the legacy to leave behind for your kids and stories. I mean, most of us don't know. I was sharing with that too, is, we walk into a very blip on a radar of a moment in time in our clients' lives. But it was very interesting because when I first met you, we walked through your home and we went down to your basement, and you had all your books on that kind of white bookshelf right when you came down the stairs. Mm-hmm. And you said, "These are all my books." And I thought, "What do you mean all your books?" And you meant all my books. And you gave me a biddance, and so a bidance, I'm sorry. And you gave this one to me, and you said, because I'd shared that I was married and had kids, and you said, "I feel like this is something you should read." And I went home and I read it, and I shared with you that, there was lots of moments in this that, brought me to tears. And I think more of it is learning the stories and, the story of your house and why that home was so important to you and things like that. So I feel like sometimes when you write things and are brave enough to put it in paper, how that will touch people and make them have a more well-rounded view of someone, and also maybe a story they don't understand.
Well, I think particularly Abidance and my newest one, Widow Wilderness. People write books about old people, but they aren't old. And the only way to know how it feels to be almost 94 is to be almost 94.
Right.
And I think with the Bidens and Widow Wilderness, they could be very helpful to people who work with old people.
Absolutely.
To help them understand how it feels to be an old person, to have lived a long life, to be facing the end of that long life.
And the decisions, we deal with just moving, but a decision to move is a big decision no matter what time of life. Yes. But the decision to move at your age, when I met you, is a different decision altogether.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about that decision that you made, kind of what made you decide to downsize and move, because that was the first move probably alone for you.
Well, it was, of course. It was the first anything alone. Let me go back just a minute.
Sure.
to say one of the other totally unplanned things in my life. I did not plan to be a widow. Even though, Les was 8 years older than I. Men live longer than women. But it just couldn't happen. He was absolutely the love of my life. And I want to read a little poem.
Oh, please do.
To you. Called Old Spice, Old Love. My breathing sharpens each time I see you across a room and you flash that incredible smile. My heart beats wildly when I catch your scent or your arms enfold me. My spirit rests in the comfort of your care and the knowing you're there. But sometimes now I see the shadows of eternity lengthen across your face. God grant us courage against that day when one of us will go away. So I loved him very, very deeply, and I did not. I couldn't imagine ever having we shattered into me. And I always thought that grief was a mountain, that somehow you could climb over it, maybe barrel through it, skirt it all together, somehow get to the other side. And now I know grief is not a mountain. Grief is a road. It has no end, and there is no other side. But then I learned during this year, the 2 years as I was writing the book, and I was living alone, and it was the pandemic, I was seeing no one. I left the house only about 6 times in 2 years.
Wow.
I learned a new thing then. Let me just find this paper. It's kind of hard when you're blind. And find my.
I feel you're doing a heck of a job.
And find my glasses and read a poem too that's called Lesson. Surprised that I endure, shocked to still survive. I had not thought I would. I had not felt I could. But now I find I'm slowly learning in my body, in my mind, not how to live without you, but how to shelter in the love you left behind.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So, go back to your question. I kind of digress.
I think you set the question perfectly, and the question is, you know, we deal with people in moving, and moving is hard, but a move at your age, after your life, after a loss, after whatever entanglements, that's health deteriorations, what have you, it's a different decision.
Well, I had always vehemently told the children, I will never leave this house. No matter, I knew Les was gone. I knew it was going to be hard, but I will never leave this house, kids. And then one February afternoon, I had a rather revealing conversation with my daughter. And I suddenly realized this is selfish of me. It's causing my children too much time and energy to keep me in this house. So somehow I have to leave. And I didn't see any way I could do that. But I realized, so I began, this was February, and I began thinking about it, and I was already decluttering because that's just what I do in the wintertime. I, get rid of stuff. And then one day, this was now spring, my son had just cut my lawn, which he had been doing for 10 years. And I said to him, Bob, what would you think about it if I moved? And he struggled to hide his glee and keep a very calm face.
I bet.
And he said, well, that might be an idea. You probably can't stay here till the end of your life, and rather than later might be a good time to move. Well, the next morning, I called someone at Windcrest, and I'm just being exploratory. I'm not really going to move. I'm just thinking about it, and so we talked, and I went to visit. Les and I visited Windcrest and many other retirement facilities for probably 15 years. But I went to visit Windcrest, and I also went online and checked the other ones out and so forth. That was about the 3rd of June, and on the 13th of July, I moved. Meanwhile, Paige had come to see me, and I had never heard of project managers, but I was also exploring that. That was one of the most wonderful things that happened in that whole difficult period of time.
Yeah, well, we work really closely with that community, and we were visiting a little earlier too about how they do some floor planning for us and really kind of tee the move up, and so we just kind of come in, and it's usually a well-oiled machine at that point. We kind of help you walk through those moments, but I remember when walking through your home, there was a couple of things that really stuck out. There was pieces of furniture in your home that you told me stories that were just amazing. Old pieces of furniture, where you had gotten them, a rocking chair that you had rocked your children in, your piano that now afterwards I learned that you taught piano lessons on. And so for people who struggle with the things that have so many memories, what helped you get past that hurdle of, I can let this go and I'm going to keep these things? What helped you either mentally or, kind of emotionally through letting go of some of those very emotional pieces of furniture?
Well, I just decided I have to move. Clearly, I can't take everything with me. I have to be ruthless in deciding what I'm going to leave. And I only took things that I needed or totally loved and couldn't leave behind, because I wanted to be in a space that had room for reflection.
I love that.
I wanted to be in a space that was not cluttered, where I could be at peace, where I could think about less, remember the wonderful things about our time together, the wonderful things about him. And so with that in mind, it's a little bit like, I think it's Marie Kondo, just don't take things unless they bring you joy.
Yes.
And that's one thing I've learned about grief. You have to learn to hold grief in one hand and joy in the other. Because if you can't do that, you're going to miss out on a lot of joy. And it's okay to feel sad and happy at the same time.
Sure, and in fact, sometimes they inform each other.
They
Without
do.
the joy, the grief isn't felt. You don't know what you're missing or what's
Right.
what's lacking.
Right.
So you said, I love that you said you had to be ruthless and you wanted a space for reflection. So where did those things go? Because there's so many people who are like, well, where does it go? Did some of it go to family? Did it stay in the family system, or did it get sold? What happened to the things?
That was kind of this wonderful, wonderful serendipity that happened to me. Okay, I'd already reserved, put a hold on an apartment at Windcrest, and I was getting ready to put the house up for sale. I was supposed to sign the real estate man had been there, and I was supposed to sign the papers on Friday. My oldest son called me. I talked to him on Wednesday. He said, hold off till Monday. Just hold off till Monday. And so he said, I had someone who is mildly interested, but give him a call. So I gave this young man a call. He came on Thursday and looked at the house, and he told me Saturday morning he wanted it. We hadn't even talked about the price. He just wanted the house.
Sure.
Well, it turned out that he was kind of starting out, and he said, anything that you don't want to take, leave. And so it helped me as I was getting rid of things to know I was leaving them to somebody
Sure.
with whom I had a connection, because this was somebody my son knew.
Mm-hmm.
And so even some things I might have thought of taking, I thought, oh, I'm just going to leave them for him. He'll need this. And that helped.
Yeah.
But I do know from my parents' death that it's not that difficult.
I love that you say that.
It's not that difficult. The family takes what they want. Then you have a sale, an estate sale, and at the end of that, somebody comes and takes all the rest of the junk, and you're left with a house with a pencil and a couple of loose leaves, dried leaves.
Is that what you did for your parents then? You said that was kind of the process?
That's what I did with my parents.
Okay.
And then you go ahead and sell the house. So I think people see this as an incredibly difficult thing to do. And, there certainly are components that are very, very difficult. But your stuff doesn't have to be that difficult.
So now you've moved into your new apartment. How has life, after making that decision, how has that life been the last few years that you've...
Just wonderful.
Oh, good.
I mean, it's been 4 years now since Les died. And, well, there's something I got to read about that. Well, let me read about this just because this is about the moving thing, and it's about papers.
Oh, papers. We say the hardest thing to get rid of is papers.
How do I downsize papers? the last remnants of my parents' mementos. How do I discard Les's college essays, my earliest writings, cards and notes from the children, and a scrap of paper that says, "I'm really fond of my dear wife." I wander around the house, picking up this, picking up that, slowly setting them back down, unable to decide. So that's how you do it.
I love that. Papers is very difficult because sometimes it's a chore nobody wants to do on the mundane bills and things like that. But then there's also the hard stuff, the handwritten things, the drawings, the notes, the cards. So did you keep some? Did you get rid of some?
I kind of kept one of the most poignant from each of my beloved people.
There you go.
And I tore the front off of lots of cards and donated them. There are various places that make new cards out of old cards.
Oh, okay. Did not know that was a thing.
So, yeah. For a long time, St. Jude's Hospital took them.
Okay.
I don't think they do anymore. I know at Windcrest, they have a group of volunteers that makes cards out of old cards.
Okay. Very nice. And so you said just a couple of things. What did your kids end up taking? Did they take a lot or take a little bit?
They didn't take a lot because number one, they're all old and well settled, and they have their own things.
Sure.
And they all took some things, just things that they especially liked.
Sure.
And in my closet, I have probably about a 1 foot, 18 inches space that I have my favorite clothes of Les.
Oh, and then all the rest did you donate, or?
All the rest of them, I donated them either to family, for the people who could wear the various things, and then I just donated them to Goodwill.
And I feel like you spent some really good time downsizing. You spent time, going through things, and really, was that part of your cathartic process? Because I know not everyone can go through, their loved ones' things. Was it something cathartic for you to go through, or was it difficult and you ended up did you call in help? Kind of how did that process look?
Well, it was 3 months after Les died that I gathered up his things that I knew no one would. Well, I gathered them all up, put them all on the bed, and picked out things that I thought the various children and grandchildren might want, and then I shipped them to them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I just needed the closet space at that point. And as I said, I kept these favorite things. I have his cowboy boots. Yeah, I have his. And, in my new apartment, I have a very large walk-in closet, and I have a chest of drawers in there. On top of the chest of drawers, I have his flag from Fort Logan. He was a World War II veteran. I have pictures of him. I have an urn with his ashes. And that's kind of where I go in the morning and say, "Good morning, sweetheart."
Yeah, that's nice. Kind of like your own little altar.
And so I feel his presence. Yeah.
Good. Even in a new space, I think that's great too.
Because I was worried about that.
Yeah.
I was worried, I'm going to leave this space where we live together so
Sure.
long. And how can I feel that I haven't abandoned him?
Yeah.
I have the cedar chest that he gave me for the first Christmas when we were engaged. I have a bench and an entertainment center that were unfinished wood that he finished. He was a master wood finisher. And so I have those parts of him. Yeah.
Lovely. How do your kids feel? So I know you talked a little bit about them and their concerns and, them being kind of brave enough to share that with you. So how do they feel now? Are they?
They thought I did it all too fast, of course,
Oh.
which I did. When I think back on it, I think I only looked at 3 apartments, and I just moved. But I think they all feel very gratified now that I'm safe, that I'm happy.
Good. And they come visit, the ones that are local?
They come visit, well, they all come visit.
Good.
The 2 that live out of town, definitely, one lives in Phoenix, one in Traverse City, Michigan. And my children are very attentive to me. I'm very lucky with them.
Yes, you are. So the title of our podcast is the Making Space for podcast. So, I mean, throughout your life, you've obviously made a lot of space, and I love that you talked about creating space in your own, new downsized apartment for reflection. But what are some of the things that you feel like in your life that you've intentionally created space, and where that has, kind of propelled you forward or made, made that a good journey for you? What are some ways that you've made space?
I have walked a great deal. And all the years that I was teaching, for a while I took a nap after lunch. I mean, teaching music, piano is a weird schedule.
It is a weird schedule. After school, usually,
well,
right?
I would have my first lessons at 6:30 in the morning, and I'd teach until school started. And then I'd start at 3 and maybe teach until 8, because it's hard to fit in 65 kids.
I was trying to do the math, and if you're doing 30-minute lessons or an hour lesson, that's a lot.
And for a while, I would, I'd get very tired, so I'd take a nap after lunch. Then I thought, maybe I could walk instead of taking the nap. And I've always done my very best thinking walking.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of a meditative sort of thing for me. So that was one of the ways that I made space. There wasn't a lot of space raising 4 children.
I bet not.
7. When we moved into the house, they were 7, 5, 3, and 1. And so I've had a very busy life. I've worked very hard. And so I've had to just grab moments of space.
Mm-hmm.
But I've kind of always been able to do that. I'm not a person that has a radio or a TV on all day, because I want the quiet so that I can think.
So actual space in your environment, absolutely.
Yes.
And when you downsized, are there things that you felt like you got rid of that created this new space for yourself?
Well, definitely. I'm just trying to think of.
Having a home is, while all the wonderful things of having a home, there's also a lot of work when it comes to having a home, maintenance of a home, things like that. And so, a downsize or a transition into something smaller and for you, 0 maintenance, right?
Right.
Sometimes we lose sight of what we gain just by getting rid of even just having, your own residence you must maintain.
I revel in that. When I set the trash out, it's by the door, not down a long, icy driveway.
Mm.
Same thing for recycle. I love an efficient kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I really love having more space as related to time. I love being on the 4th floor. I think I always wanted
something up high.
Yeah, my office and my studio were all in a basement.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't even tell if it was snowing.
Yeah.
I sit at my desk now and look out. I look east as far as I can see. I mean, yeah.
The last book that you've written you talked about it, was The Widow Wilderness, and
Yes.
It was your journey up into, Les passing away, and then kind of what happens right after.
Well, it starts in 2018 when we celebrated our 70th anniversary.
Right.
And then 19 was fraught with illness and a broken hip, and then of course at 20 he died. And then I go on 21, 22, and I end the book the first Christmas I spend in my new apartment.
And I love that well, I've read it obviously, and I really, beautiful poems and stories, and but I also love that you kind of give that it's the whole piece. It's the before, it's the during, and it's the after. And you know, kind of how you, I mean, maybe bounce back isn't the word, but really how you took charge of, you know, kind of the next chapter. You were married at 17, so your singledom was very short.
Yes, it certainly was.
It's very short.
I moved directly from my father's house to my husband's.
Yes, so I mean, you didn't have a whole lot of time for this self-exploration.
No, I didn't.
And while you did, I mean, obviously you've written a bunch of things and had an amazing career and things like that, but I mean, are you looking forward to kind of this new chapter of kind of self-exploration of it's not you and it's you, and, you know, kind of sandwiched in the shorter amounts of time? How, you know, are you looking forward to that piece?
To say that I'm enjoying it, I am enjoying it. I guess to say that I'm happy might be an overstatement.
Sure.
But I'm peaceful, and I look forward to each day. I wake up in the morning, I think Les would be so happy to know that I'm here. He worried so much about leaving me, and he would be so happy to see that I built another life, that I'm going forward, that I am happy in my own skin.
And there's a book that he never saw, but it's such a huge part of, and I think that's great too, that you had something that you did even after.
He didn't ever see Beloved either, because I wrote Beloved the first year, and I got it ready in time for the first anniversary.
Oh yes, I do recall you saying that.
To give it to our kids and surprise them.
What a great legacy for them.
And that was, I think writing that book that year got me through it.
Sure.
Through that year. And probably writing Widow Wilderness kind of moved me forward too.
I bet. How long did it take you to write it?
Well, I started about 2 years ago. I have written my books in varying amounts of time. Like one was 7 years and one was 9 months. I mean, it just kind of depends. This one, I started about 2 years ago. I woke up one morning. I was actually working on a different book, and I woke up one morning and I had this idea, no, you have to write a widow book. And this is kind of how you have to do it. And so I kind of started that day. I had to have someone come and read some of my diaries to me as I typed on the computer, just to get the raw material. Because of course I can't read my diaries. I have 77 years of diaries, and the irony is I can't read a word of them.
Man. You know, that just spawned a way for me to think that there are ways to archive those and digitize those. And, you know, not that that's something you have to do, but something that would be really great. You know, I feel like the act of diary and journaling is, it's not as common as it used to be. My mom has a diary that she has written in, and it doesn't have a lot. It's just what happened in the day. But I just, what an amazing routine and things that now you have left behind, because my mom can literally, and she'll pull it back in her diary. Well, it was this day. Yeah. It was on this day that this happened.
Mother's a woman after my own heart.
And I don't diary a bit. So that's funny. I have to rely on now digital photos to remind me of what happened on Sunday. But yeah, so tell us what's next. Like, what does this next chapter have to hold for you?
I don't know. I didn't know what most of the other chapters had to hold for me. like I said, most of my life was unplanned and unexpected. It's just a matter, if doors open, walk through them. And to this day, if an opportunity arises, I will take it.
Have you been on a podcast before?
No.
Oh, there you go.
I haven't.
So here we go.
So that's kind of a special thing. So there's one thing that, okay, this is something, one of my mantras is something Emily Dickinson said. I dwell in possibilities.
Yes.
And so I'm open, I think I would say. And then another of my mantras is something that Edmund Everett Hale wrote. And of course, I keep thinking I can see, and I can't. That's another thing. I'm always surprised. I can't see. I am only one, but I am still one. I cannot do everything, but I still can do something. And although I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something I can do.
Ah, very nice. You know, Lois, you've always struck me from the moment I met you to spending time with you today, sitting across the chair. Your books are very honest. They're very raw. You don't sugarcoat things. You tell the good with the bad. But what I appreciate the most is your spirit about it. Your spirit of, I guess, fortitude and grit, and that's very rare, I think, in someone, and I very much admire that about you. Where do you think that comes from? What makes you that way?
Well, I guess my ethnic background a long time ago, would be German.
Okay.
I think that makes me a little compulsive. And it does give me fortitude.
Yeah.
My parents gave me fortitude.
Because you share, I wish sometimes that I had like the words that you do, but you shared very, I loved the one that I read first. It was it was the good and the bad, that you weren't trying to make it all this lovely story, but you were sharing the things that were troubling and how you made it through. And Les, he made you spitting mad some days, but then also, melted your heart in the next day with a sweet note or something like that. So I love that you kind of gave both sides to that, because I do feel like that is a rare thing people share, is the realism that is a marriage, and how that can develop over time.
Well, I mean, we disagreed in quite a lot of things, and we're not shy about that. And this poem is called Magnet. Whenever we see a small tip loom, we take our corners across the room and yell, because any proximity causes me to zoom, as if drawn by a magnet, straight into your arms, dear friend and sweet lover. And just like that, the argument is over.
You did a very good job of doing that by memory. Yeah, I've heard the story, and I almost think that it was my grandpa. My grandfather, I was lucky enough, before he passed away, he married my husband and I. He was a pastor, a Methodist minister, and he said something to the effect of, when you quarrel, it's who's right, and just make sure that your wife is more right than you. And I think that, there are some things of that, and I feel like your generation is a little bit maybe perhaps more generous and in that way in a relationship. And so it's very true. But like I said, I just really appreciate your honesty and just not sugarcoating some of the hard stuff, not sugarcoating, you didn't sugarcoat the being a widow and what you went through and the feelings and emotions. And, I probably the good and the bad, but you were blessed enough to be able to be with him. And not everyone gets that lucky bit of journey with someone.
Well, this is another poem that I could quote by memory. It's called Gratitude. The two most earnest wishes of my life: to live longer than you so that you will never be alone, and to hold your hand when you die.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. And I feel like you're very lucky to have had that journey, to be able to hold his hand and be there at the end. Because I know that was not, during the middle of COVID, was not a good time for anyone, and especially somebody who is struggling in that space.
Well, and when you think about life and its many activities, it's just simply not a given that you're going to be there when your loved one dies.
Absolutely. It's a gift.
It's a gift.
It is a gift.
And I felt a great deal of gratitude for that.
Good.
I feel a great deal of gratitude for many things. And I think that gratitude is probably what gets you through a lot.
And I don't think many people have that practice. It's a hard practice to have, as a practice of gratitude. I know that's part of some people's meditation and things. They have to consciously, think of their gratitude and bring it to the surface. So I guess with that, what last words or last bits of advice or pieces would you like to leave us with today?
Well, I do. Okay. This is the final poem in my book. You might open to it, and then you can prompt me if I forget what I'm doing.
This one is A Sliver of Light?
Yes.
Okay.
The door of despair cracks slightly ajar. Small motes of dust from a far distant star dance in the beam, then fall to the floor. A wee hint of healing not noticed before. A sliver of hope, a sliver of light. Then
A hint
of something quite new.
I first
feel aghast, and then reach to embrace this dawn of a widening view.
Beautiful. What a way to end. Thank you so much, Lois, for being with us today.
Thank you.
You're an inspiration to me, and I hope to others, and I'm so glad to have known you and to have been part of a small part of your journey, and I know these books forever will be very tender, something for me.
Well, I feel very, very honored. And let me just say a little bit more about A Move Handled with
Sure.
Care. It was a total boon to me. This company cares about the people that they're moving. They care about finding you a home and making it feel like home. And I appreciate that more than words could say.
Thank you. Yes, that is definitely at the core of who we are. And I think stories like yours are what we say it all the time, it's what makes our job the most fun in the world, is we get to experience life through, almost 94 years with just one of you. And we get to do that day and day. So we really appreciate that.
And we appreciate you.
Thank you.
That wraps up another inspiring episode of the Making Space For podcast. A huge thank you to our incredible guest and to you, our cherished listeners. Your journey to intentional living begins with each small step, and we're honored to be a part of it. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please consider liking, subscribing, and rating our podcast on your favorite platform. Before we part ways, a friendly reminder, if you're embarking on a move or seeking expert guidance in downsizing, remember A Move Handled with Care in Denver. With over 15 years of experience in senior and specialty move management, we're here to transform your transition into a seamless, stress-free experience. Visit amovehandledwithcare.com for more information, and let's continue making space for the life you've always wanted. Until next time, stay inspired, stay intentional, and keep making space for what matters most.